Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I can't tell you how happy I am to see people here tonight. As I got into the car in the cold and wet, I thought surely no one is crazy enough to come here. So I'm so happy that you're all
really good you
just
didn't
crazy enough.
It's good you didn't go into marketing.
Yes. But it warms my heart to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces tonight as we say goodbye to the secular year. In Judaism, we like to take pauses in time. We divide the day into 3 sections, pausing at each section for a different type of prayer. We take a pause each week for Shabbat, and throughout the calendar year, there are holidays upon holidays that invite us to stop and to look at where we are in this moment. And so as American Jews, we celebrate the secular New Year, and we take a moment to stop and to look back from where we came. And let's take a moment to look back, each of us in our own hearts, on the last year and look for the joys, look for the happiness, look for those moments that we want to hold close to us, that we don't want to let time take from our memories. What are those things that you want to hold on to this year? Were they moments with loved ones? Perhaps a new person coming into the family? Perhaps just achieving something that you would put your mind to. Hold on to those blessings and join us in saying, Hallelujah. Give praise to God.
Hallelujah, 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 amen. Hallelujah, 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 amen. Hooray, hooray, matov manayim, Shabbat kingdom yachad, hooray, matov manayim, Shabbat kingdom yachad. Hallelujah, 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 amen. Hallelujah, 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 amen.
Before we welcome the Sabbath Queen into our midst, let's take a little time to welcome each other. And I'd like to invite people to stand up and to introduce yourselves to at least 2 or 3 people you didn't know when you walked in tonight.
Okay, I have to find out what the door is.
Well, I'll ask one.
my glasses are reading glasses now.
I think you meant to say bifocals.
No, they're progressive. They're three. Yeah.
Are we ready?
For what? To pray. You know what you should do? We're skipping the service. We're going to the Onek.
Everyone looks like they're having so much fun. We're going to skip the service tonight and go straight to the Oneg. Is everyone okay with that?
These guys with the hats starting a gang? Is that what it is?
Yes. They're,
Alex, you looked way too happy at that suggestion.
Merciful side of little
So we continue now.
I didn't realize that you were talking, Rabbi.
You never do, Cancer. You never do. We continue on page 138 with Lecha Dodi. We will be singing the chorus and verse 9. Please join us. La 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 Lecha Dodi. La 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 Mikrat Kala. La 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 B'nai Shabbat. B'nai Shabbat V'kabela. Boi v'shalom. Ateret balam. Gam besimcha. Uzola. Toch emnei. Am segulam. Boi chala, boi chala. Lai, 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 la 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 di. La 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 la, hikrat kala. La 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 la, B'nai Shabbat, B'nai Shabbat V'kabela. So for those of you who are joining us at home, one of the things that you miss out on, in addition to a lovely Ode, is you don't always get to see the congregants who are here. And from our point of view up on the Bima, each Shabbat we have a lovely view of a different rotating cast of gentlemen who like to wear fedoras to services. And so it is my pleasure tonight to invite all those who are wearing a fedora to please do us the honor of lighting the Shabbat candles.
Can I put it here?
The blessing for the candles can be found on page 120, but first we continue with Shalom Aleichem on page 142.
What should the people at home who are wearing fedoras do?
And if you happen to be wearing a fedora at home, please rise and light your candles at this time.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyoni Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boker L'Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shal Shabbat.
Amen. You want to do English?
Yes. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As the brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We rise as we continue with the Baruch Hu on page 146.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
We continue together on the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim.
Who knows how long I've loved you? You know I love you still. Will I wait a lonely lifetime? If you want me to, I will. For if I ever saw you, I didn't catch your name, but it never really mattered. I will always feel the same. Love you forever and forever. Love you with all my heart. Love you whenever we're together. Love you when we're apart. And when at last I find you, your song will fill the air. Sing it loud so I can hear you. Make it easy to be near you. For the things you do endear you to me. Oh, you know I will. La da 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 da, da 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 da, la da 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 da.
Page 152.
Shema
Yisrael,
Adonai
Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto,
Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed.
We continue together with the Ve'ahavta on page 154.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת.
We continue together with the Micha Mocha on page 158.
Die, 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 ya, die, 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 ya, die, 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 mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilo, osef eleh, Nora tehilo, osef eleh. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע היה לפני משה ומרים. זה אלי אנו ועמל, אדוני ימלוך לעולם באל. די 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 ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
When I got into my car tonight and I complained to myself about the rain and the cold, in truth, I was only walking about 20 feet from my door to the car, and again a short distance from my car to here. It's a little self-indulgent for those of us with homes and coats and warm places to lay our head at night to complain about this weather. When we drive from our homes to synagogue, has so many tents, so many makeshift structures where people are desperately trying to stay safe, trying to stay warm. It feels arrogant to ask God to give us a shelter of peace when we already have one. And so perhaps this prayer, the Hashkivenu, is a reminder to those of us who do go to sleep each night, feeling safe and sound in our homes. Maybe this is a reminder to us to do God's work here on earth. So if you have time in the next week, help those who have less than yourself. Donate to the food bank. Maybe drop off some blankets to people you see at the same stops, asking for food, asking for money each time you pass by them. But think about, what can you do to create some sort of shelter of safety for those all around us? Page 160.
Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hoshkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom. Ve'amidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hoshkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom. Ve'amidenu malkeinu l'chaim.
We continue together on page 162.
Yes, we do. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We rise for the tefillah beginning on page 164.
Adonai, sefatai tiftachu fi yadi teilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor Ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chasdei Avot B'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Hozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mekayeh Akol, Atah Rav Le'Oshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh Akol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofeh Kolim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishonei Afar, Michamocha Ba'gevurot, Umidom Elach, Melech Nemit, Umekayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom, ye'alelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We continue praying privately from page 172 through 180, either sitting or standing, as is your custom.
יהיו לרצון נמרצים, Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri Begoali, Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri Begoali. Go inside your heart, just be. Go inside your heart and see what it wants, what it needs, what it yearns when you breathe. Go inside your heart and see. May the word of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be kind. Be true, may be acceptable to you, oh my rock and my redeemer.
Our thoughts and our prayers now turn towards those in our lives, or perhaps ourselves, who are in need of a refuah shlema, complete healing of body and spirit. And we continue together on page 371. Phoebe, do you want me to add you to the list?
Mishaberak Avotenu, Abraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. Mishaberak Imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Berachah. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer. 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 And bless us as well.
Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Bless us with a vision for tomorrow. Help us to reach out to those in pain. May the warmth of friendship ease our sorrow. Give us courage, give us faith, show us the way.
Mishaberach Avotenu, Mishaberach Imotenu. Hear our prayer.
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 Hear our prayer. Hear
Hear our prayer.
our prayer.
Hear our prayer.
Hear our prayer. And
Bless
bless us
as well.
Shalom. So as I was trying to think about what could I possibly talk about on the last Shabbat of the year, I looked through the Torah portion. It's a good one. It's fascinating. I highly recommend it.
It's streaming live now.
Well, no, they could actually study it in the morning with Rabbi Stacy. It's a very good portion. And then I decided, I'm not sure that's where my head was. And so I looked at the Jewish papers, because like the secular papers, it'll tell you kind of end of the year highlights. And, you know, if you ever want to feel great, you should read the Jewish papers. So one of the articles was the 18 biggest Jewish stories of 2022. And until I looked at that article, I had forgotten how long this year actually was. So I'm going to read some of what they thought were the highlights of the year, as I give you guys an opportunity to think about what are the things that you want us to talk about tonight. Because I think it's fun to end the year with a Ask the Rabbi, but I thought it might be interesting to give you a little bit narrower parameter and really talk about what's in the world for the Jewish community right now. So, are you ready for this? Everyone took their antidepressants tonight? Okay, number one story for the Jewish people this year, anti-Semitic assaults and abuse. Number 2, celebrity anti-Semitism. Number 3, and I had forgotten that this was really only last January, the Shabbat hostages. I don't know if you remember, it was the middle of January last year that Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker and 3 of his congregants were held hostage in their Texas synagogue on a Shabbat morning. Number 4, that's okay, Charlie ended the year getting to light the menorah at the White House, so it ended up better than it started for him. Number 4, Roe v. Wade was overturned. And for the Jewish community, this is also an issue of religious freedom, particularly because the mindset behind overturning it is coming from a religious place. Number 5 was actually a good story. It's a mixed bag. So the good story is that we have an international Jewish hero, Vladimir Zelensky. The bad news is he becomes a hero because Russia invades his country. 6, and I had forgotten about this one too, the Highland Park Parade Massacre on the 4th of July, when a gunman opened fire on a 4th of July parade in Highland Park, where it's a pretty densely Jewish community. Number 7, new scrutiny on Trump's ties to anti-Semites after he had dinner with a few notable ones. Number 8, midterm madness. We had a record number of people running in the midterms who were overtly anti-Semitic in their political rhetoric. I'm going to stop with that because it gets worse from there. So, so I had actually forgotten what a rough year this was. What? Shabbat Shalom. Guri was awesome, but yeah, it's a rough year. And then one of the ones I didn't read, which I don't know if it's a this year's story or it's an upcoming story, which was the Israeli elections, which 5th election, I think in 2 years, 3 years, I've lost count. Do you remember? I think it's in 2 years. 5 elections in 2 years? Too many, just too many. And in this current election, we saw a new prime minister, old prime minister come back into power who's currently being investigated for corruption. We saw that they're striking down a law that bans racists from being able to serve in government, and they are reviewing the law of return. And, and also they dropped a law that bans formerly convicted members of parliament from being able to serve again as a member of parliament. So it's been a rough year. And I'm just curious where you guys are at and what we could be doing as a community, either locally or nationally, that you feel like we're not doing and we should be doing. Or if you feel that your needs here are being fulfilled, because the world outside of these gates can be a little overwhelming sometimes. So if there's any Ask the Rabbi questions on that really fun and upbeat note, don't be shy about raising your hand. And don't worry if you haven't come a lot before, if this is your first time, everyone is encouraged and welcome to participate. Wait, you want to comment on my... Yes, you can definitely comment. That's a very Jewish thing, actually, but asking if you can comment rather than question, usually we just go for it.
One of the things that I've thought about a fair amount is that quotation we've all heard that the arc of history bends towards justice, and I don't think that's true. And I think it puts pressure on people to feel that they failed if they don't believe that, but that democracy is always a struggle, that freedom is always contended, and that it's okay to feel like we're doing the same thing over and over again because that's what justice is. So that, yeah, don't feel bad if you feel tired, and don't feel like you aren't doing the right thing if you are still in the same struggle. So that's my power.
So I'm going to agree and disagree with you. I've thought a lot about that particular quote and in exactly the context that you're talking about. And one of the things that I have to remind myself is even though it feels like we're in the same struggle, we are further along in that same struggle. That even when we're talking about something like reproductive rights for women or women's equality, it's not looking good right now. And it definitely feels like we're going backwards. But even with us going backwards, we're still further ahead than we were 50 years ago. We're not exactly we have more women elected in Congress and the Senate than we did 50 years ago. So we actually have women in the rooms now where laws are being made, which we didn't have so much 50 years ago. We can actually have our own checkbooks and our own savings accounts and not have to ask permission to get a credit card. So yes, I totally agree. It doesn't feel like it's bending towards justice, but part of it is because we're too close to where we are. That sometimes you have to really, really step far back to be able to see where the changes have come. Because right now, we're too busy just fighting. But yeah, I feel that weariness. Alex, you had your hand up.
I'll admit that I don't know enough about the internal workings of Israeli politics to know how nervous I should be. So, well, my question is, as a rabbi of a Reform congregation and your colleagues of other Reform congregations, what are you most worried about, and what do you think the likelihood of those things coming to pass?
Do you want me to get the magic ball?
I feel like I have to sit down for this one. I am most worried about a permanent fissure between American Jews and Israel. That's my greatest fear. That we will feel completely disconnected. That we'll feel like we are part of a different religion, part of a different people, part of a different value system. I think this is a pretty catastrophic government on every level. I shudder to think what things are going to look like in the West Bank with the person who's being in charge of that. I think that it is going to make it virtually impossible to have a real peace. I think the revisiting of the law of return of the Israeli government legislating for world Jewry in their opinion, who is Jewish and who is not. I think these are very serious problems. I sent an email to the Cohen Kedems this week as I was reading, like each new day, there's a new little piece coming out of what this deal with the new government looks like. And so I sent them an email, basically a sympathy email, saying this has got to be really hard right now. And Adar emailed me back, a very lengthy email about how devastating this is for a lot of them there right now. That this isn't, it's not the Israel they grew up in. You know, it's a very different reality. And I think that they're going to need our help more than ever. And I think it's going to be harder for us to give it. And that to me is a very scary thing. Anyone will, oh, of course, Glenn. Or, I'll go for Daryl first. Glenn, you could ask me a question on the way home if you want. For those of you who don't know, that's my husband, not just some random man.
So, even though I wasn't able to attend, I was struck this year by your trip with congregants to the civil rights trip that you took. And then I was thinking about, I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Your concern about, where's the hope and where, and I do think that in the synagogue here, and this is maybe just an idea, that there maybe be some more focused teaching on the relationship between Jews who have helped change American history for the better. Because, Julie knows, I'm a big fan of this guy, John Meacham, and he writes so eloquently about the Civil War, about other chapters of American history where things were arguably worse than they are today, arguably. And yet, the arc of justice in some ways has moved forward. I remember when I started in the legislature back in the 90s, that it was a controversial bill with many Democrats voting no to grant domestic partner benefits for hospital visitation for LGBTQ couples. That's what I remember. And now we have marriage equality as the statutory law of the land. And that's remarkable in a generation. I think sometimes we understandably are down with all the saturation and all the negativity, and some of it's real and the risks are real. But if we could focus on the Jewish connection to social justice, as you did on this trip, even more regularly, I just think it gives you more hope, because there's great history about what we've done to overcome and the part our community has played. I just think we should uplift that more.
So you should listen to the announcements where Josh is going to tell you about some of the educational. I think there's something on there that the Racial Equality Committee, I think, has some upcoming educational programs coming on. And actually, I'll come back to him in a sec. But Daryl's reminder about the civil rights trip, actually, that did give me actually a lot of hope, because one of the interesting things from my perspective, and I could be totally wrong, but the cities that looked to be the most prosperous in the South were the ones that were also more integrated. And it was really interesting to see the stark differences between the towns that were kind of still living in that 1960s Jim Crow mentality versus the ones that were trying to actually change things. It was completely different types of towns. So like even Birmingham, which in the 60s had been a terrible, the site of some of the most horrendous attacks on African Americans, now is this incredible thriving community that is much more integrated. Whereas, do you remember, where did we go for Shabbat? I can't remember. It was the capital of the South during the Civil War. I cannot remember the name of it. No. No, I wish. That would have been fun to go to. No. God. Thank you to the California public school education system. Anyway, the place that had been the capital of the South looked tired and old, and as though history had... Montgomery, thank you. Thank you, Google. No, okay. Oh, photos, okay. You could see a difference, and there was progress. There's a lot more that needs to be done. I mean, so much that needs to be done, but it's better. I really do have to call on Glenn, otherwise I'll get in trouble later.
I'm going to ask a question that might sound as if it's a joke, but it's really not. And I just want to preface this by saying I am not panicked or think that it is now, but sincerely, given the upsurge of anti-Semitism, and given that it seems to be now, I've never seen this before, but actual congressmen openly talking about things, when do we know it's time to leave?
So it's actually not anti-Semitism that makes me nervous about that. It's the rise of Christian nationalism. So while anti-Semitism is definitely on the increase, it's definitely uncomfortable. When you look at it in the scope of, on a scale of 1 to 10, the anti-Semitism that Jews have experienced, we're still in a pretty good place compared to all the horrible things that have happened to us in the past. The real danger to the Jewish community is Christian nationalism. So it's not about when will the point where there's going to be physical attacks on the streets or different things. The real threat is, when does the government start to repeal rights? When does the First Amendment, I mean, we have elected officials who have actively advocated changing the First Amendment, who don't think that freedom of religion is important. And I think that's the stuff that we need to watch out for, is the amount of people who are Christian nationalists who are getting elected to national offices. I think it's a real threat, not just to Jews, but to minorities, to the LGBTQ community, to anybody who are not straight, white, heterosexual Christians. It's a real threat.
One of the things that, when we start talking about anti-Semitism or starting to talk about these huge topics, that's, I think, when we get into that mindset of like, it's so overwhelming, we're not getting anywhere, nothing's happening. I think one of the things that would help all of us is to start looking at the little things that can be done, that are happening, like the fact that, the Robert E. Lee statue has been finally removed from Richmond, from the center of that. It's gone. I'm reminded, there's a book on the civil rights movement, I think it's called A Most Beautiful and Terrible History. Author is Janine Theo Harris, and she's got like 10 steps. And the first step is be persistent. It's like, do the little things, and you have to do them again and again and again. But you start seeing progress. And I think something else that, like doing the civil rights trip, you go to these parts of the country and all of a sudden you realize it's not a monolith. We were in this rural we were in Stanton, Virginia a number of years ago, and we thought, oh my God, we are going into the reddest of the reddest places you could go. And this was, I forget what year it was, but all of a sudden there were lots of Democratic lawn signs. And it was, you start to communicate with people and you realize most people that aren't the higher up you go, the more solidified and ossified some of these attitudes get. But when you start talking to individuals, you go, there's a lot more in common than you think. And I think, a lot of organizations that we have locally, and I think probably, some of the religious organizations that you're part of are like that as well. You suddenly realize, wow, we really do have a lot in common.
We're too afraid to talk to people who look different or have a different political affiliation or are not coming from our little world. And I think that's a real danger to our country, that it doesn't feel like a united states anymore. And the less willing we are to talk to people who are different, the more dangerous it is. And I'm trying to think of how much trouble do I want to get into. This is a very controversial concept within the Jewish community. Anti-Semitism is bad. However, we are a lot safer than many other minority groups in this country. And I think it's incredibly important for the Jewish community to put things in context. For those of us who are white Jews, we're not afraid of being stopped by police officers. We're not afraid of authority figures because we assume a certain amount of privilege from our appearance. For most of us, if we're not dressed like ultra-Orthodox Jews, you cannot tell that we're Jewish by just walking down the street. And we don't live with the same physical fear that that ultra-Orthodox Jews do, or Jews of colors live with, or people who are transgender or in a same-sex relationship and holding hands down the street. And I think we really do need to keep some of this in context when we're talking about our own fears. And I think what we need to do more is more bridge building and a lot of listening and a lot of conversation with different minority groups. Because the reality is the things that we're afraid of are the same things they're afraid of. And it's in all of our best interests to work on a country that is more fair, more just. And I think that if we get too caught up in our own experience, we sometimes forget that there are many people we can be allies with and many people that we can work together with for a common goal.
My second love is history. My first love is music, obviously, besides this guy. And the thing about history is what we're going through right now is a reaction to all of the headway that we made. And though it looks like we're going backwards, we went ahead 2 steps. So far, we're going back, no, less, somewhat. 2000, almost 23.
And so let's think, what was it like at the turn of the century? Almost 23 years ago, none of us would have thought that a black man would be elected president. None of us would have thought that marriage equality would have happened in our lifetime. Yeah, Judy.
Rachel Maddow did a 8-part, I think it was, podcast called Ultra about something in history that happened in the 30s that I had no clue. Started in the 30s, went through part of the Second World War. Nazis and Nazi sympathizers were part of our Congress while we were fighting World War II. And there was a court case that didn't go the way we would think we wanted it to, and it looked a little bad until this one particular guy who'd been gathering a bunch of information started disseminating it to everyone, throughout newspapers, and individuals made groups and took action, and those people were never returned to Congress. I think we can see the same thing happening with the January 6th committee and the way that they're releasing documents.
And that's a good point, that at least we now know who doesn't like us. We now know, we're not fighting ghosts. There are real people out there that we know who've made it very clear what they think about Jews, what they think of minorities, what they think of different religious groups. And it does help. You're right, that we know what that is. So I'm going to ask you guys now the final question for this. So what do we learn from all of this? And during the Jewish New Year, we look back on the last year, we look back on what we did and what we did right and what we did wrong. And the point of looking back is so that when we go forward, we're going to go forward with more wisdom, hopefully, with more understanding, with more insight. So what do we learn from this last year that we can take going forward? The college student.
I don't remember the podcast name, but I think somebody asked Neil deGrasse Tyson what the color of the universe was, and he said it was gray. And I think that's a good example of kind of how history works, because the universe, it has this vast blackness, but in that blackness is so many stars and life, and that's what makes it gray, right in the middle. I think history, because you can pull back, you can zoom in and pull back at anywhere. If you look back, ultimately, it's this giant tapestry of all these different colors and all this different history. And I feel like history in our own world is the same way. And it won't ever be really the worst, but it won't ever be really good because people are doing good every day. And so I think that's, we can ultimately, we want to make that turn in from either light gray to white, but we don't want it to be either black because then we get lost in the black. We don't want it to be too bright because then we get blinded by it. So I think the best way we could do is have it be gray or even light gray. That's kind of how I see it.
I love that. And I think that's ultimately what Judaism has taught us through time. It's that middle ground that is the safest place to walk on. Not the far left, not the far right, but trying to find a place in the middle. And that it's that gray that makes life interesting as well. That's where we find the answers. So I love that. Thank you. So now I'd like to invite up the president of our congregation, Josh Mastronardi, who hopefully give us clarity on all the questions in the world, along with some Shabbat greetings.
I can talk about the highlights for the next year. Shabbat Shalom. And thank you to Rabbi Cantor and Michael for a wonderful service. After services tonight, there'll be an oneg. Tomorrow morning, Torah study at 9:30. Tomorrow is the last chance to stream the New Jew Israeli TV documentary series. And in addition, if you wanted to view the conversation that the producers and Rabbi Alfie had at our synagogue, that's available on our YouTube channel. The confirmation class still has some olive oil available, which is, I guess, a Hanukkah miracle for those who want to buy some olive oil. There's a link on the website. We have some, and I just used it last week, and it's pretty good. The office is closed on Monday. There's no Kulanu or Hebrew school this coming week, but next weekend starts a whole bunch of activities all throughout the rest of January. The Hadashot has all the details, dates, sign-up info, so I won't give that, but I'll just highlight some of the things. Starting next Sunday with Achim, the discussion group for men, the Walk With Me March for the Dream on January 16th, a conversation about anti-Semitism, racism, and race in the modern world with Dr. Bruce Haynes on the 19th, the Crash Course in Judaism with Rabbi Stacy on the 22nd, the Intersection of Entertainment and Social Justice with Mike Agron on the 24th. The Women of B'nai Israel are hosting Rosh Chodesh on the 26th, and then on the 29th is the beginning of the Conversational Hebrew for Beginners with Rabbi Danny Deutsch-Marshall. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Hopefully you can find something that'll be... There's a lot of adult education going on. So now, if there's anybody here on the board, past presidents or committee chairs, if you could stand and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Judy Emick Leatherwood. I'm chairman of the music committee and the wrangler for the choir, which has been rehearsing on Wednesdays and will continue for Shabbat Shirah, which is the first Friday in February. So mark your calendars. It'll be a great service, and come.
I'm Michael Hirscher. Wait, you want me to wait?
Yeah, just want to walk by so they can see you.
Okay, now I'm Michael Hirscher. And I always was the chair of the Lifelong Learning Committee, which is partially responsible for all this cool stuff that's going to happen in the next month. Not entirely.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
So we now continue our service with our concluding prayers, beginning with the Aleinu, which can be found on the bottom half of page 586. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שכונותי שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, ועדות היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. Before we continue with the Kaddish, I just want to point out one name on the Kaddish list tonight. Bernie Marx's yahrzeit is tonight. And I'm truly saddened that he wasn't here, because he would have been more than happy to take over the Ask the Rabbi and given all the answers to everyone tonight. And he is very much still in our midst. I always look right there to see if he's going to be sitting there. And so I just wanted to mention that it was Bernie's yahrzeit tonight. It's also with a lot of sadness that we've lost a number of members of our congregation and parents of members of our congregation in recent weeks. And it is with great sadness that we recall the recent passing of Matanya Ginesar, the beloved husband of Alice Ginesar, beloved father of Nathan and Dan and David Ginesar and Jeff Thompson and Lara Moborez, and a very beloved grandfather. It is also with great sadness that we recall the passing of our longtime member, Harry Karnofsky, the beloved husband of Linda Karnofsky, beloved father of Johnny Karnofsky and Allison Einzel, beloved father-in-law of Philip Einzel II, and beloved grandfather of Megan and Andrew Einzel, and beloved son-in-law of Marion Slatkin. Also with sadness, we recall the recent passing of Mike Davis, the beloved husband of Barbara Davis and beloved stepfather of Jeff Aaron and beloved father-in-law of Karen Aaron, beloved grandfather of Michael and Michelle Aaron. Also with great sadness, we recall the recent passing of Ingrid Alice Hertz, the beloved mother of Dorit Hertz, beloved mother-in-law of Tevin Laxer, and beloved grandmother of Gabriella Hertz Laxer. Zichronam livracha, may all of their memories forever be a blessing. We also recall our loved ones who have passed away at this time in years past. We remember Robert Bamberger and Shirley Bamberger, Morton Bernberg, Paula Bulos, Robert Serlin, Manuel Cohen, Cindy Emick, Lawrence Everett, Harry Feuerberg, Donald Feldman, Abraham Fine, Mark Fisher, Louis Freifeld, Leroy Gabriel, Gertrude Gilbert, Simon Gold, Louis Goldbaum, Gary Greenberg, Corinne Hathaway, Leonard Hesterman, Mildred Hesterman, Sharon Herschel, Ian Hesse, Samuel Kubel, Chet Kudik, Dorothy Lamphere, Mark Levy, Bobby Lopez, Bernie Marks, Gus Milner, Nellie Minkin, Annie Nessman, Arnold Newberger, Geneva Noland, Howard Nord, Murray Pedinoff, Eleanor Pollock, Muriel Romer, Ruth Rude, Doris Rosenblum, Roberta Rosenblum, Murray Ross, Myron Ruman, Alfred Shermer, Edith Schwartz, Sylvia Szymanski, Muriel Simons, Maxine Cajota Spitzer, Cynthia Stern, Rita Swedlow, Seymour Weiner, Joseph Wiesenthal, Walter Wolf, and Libby Zalkind. If there are any names of any loved ones that you would like to add to the Kaddish list tonight, please feel free to call those names aloud as my gaze meets yours. We rise in memory of our loved ones. Oh, sorry. I'd like to invite those who are saying Kaddish for a loved one tonight to please rise. And if the congregation could please join me in these words of comfort. Hamakom yenechem etchem b'tok sha'ar avlei Zion Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. I'd like to invite everyone to please rise to give comfort to those who grieve as we continue together on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirtei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chai yechon uv'yom uv'chayei techol beit Yisrael, ba'gala uv'izman kari v'imru, amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam umei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dikudsha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran ve'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom v'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, amen. Michael, do you have words of hope and peace to close this year with?
Yes,
Good.
of course. So I have one little footnote on the conversation that occurred before, which is when I start thinking about the arc of history being too long for my taste, that I wish it would shorten up a little bit. I think of the Pirkei Avot that says, it's not your obligation to complete creation, but neither are you relieved of the obligation to keep trying. And I think that sentiment is a lot of what keeps progressive Israelis going, that they think small. I talked to Rabbi Galit about this a couple of weeks ago, and she said, when it gets weird nationally, we just dig into the neighborhood. We do what we can where we are with the people who agree with us. And I think that's kind of what we have to do. So here we are at the end of this secular year, and I was trying to think about, what do we do in the secular New Year? We typically make New Year's resolutions, and this is a song that's sort of about making New Year's resolutions. It's about making resolutions because you better make some resolutions because stuff is coming, and this is one of the many songs that inspires us from a Jewish guy, young Jewish guy who wandered out of Minnesota 60 years ago into New York City. And he first wrote a song that many people remember that was all full of questions. Remember? Blowing in the Wind. It's just one great big long question to which there's no answer other than the answer's blowing in the wind. Go figure out what that means. But a year later, he wrote another song, which is a little more ominous in some ways. It's about change that's coming. And you better think about it and figure out what your role is. Come gather around, people. See if I can play it in the right key. Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you'd better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Come writers and critics who prophesy with your pen, now keep your wise-eyed, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will later to win, for the times they are a-changin'. Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorways, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. The battle outside is raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changin'. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, now don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand, for the times they are a-changin'. Well, the line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changin'.
So we conclude our service. That was beautiful, Michael. With the Kiddush and the Motzi afterwards, I hope everybody joins us for the wonderful oneg in the social hall. Wonderful, in the nice warm social hall. That's what I was hoping for.
Look at Dean's nodding. I'm like,
The Kiddush can be found, the blessing can be found on page 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvoto v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon inchilanu Zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tequila lemikrai kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim kivanu v'akarta ve'otanu kidashta mikol amin v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat Shalom.
Rachamim. It's a challah sandwich.
There is an edible piece of challah. Are you okay? Did you know that was coming?
No, but I'll just drink a little more.
There will be more challah for the rest of you at the Oneg. Here, do you guys want to partake?
That is funny. Where are the eyes? You forgot the little googly eyes. Baruch
Michael, do you want
atah
some?
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Patei Avon.
Shabbat shalom.
Please join us in the social hall.